everybody.
Hey everybody, this is the first time Kate and I have sat next to each other, and we've been in the building all day together. It's Holy Week.
It is. Yes, it is.
We're excited to be here with you. This is our last night with Lent in plain sight, and it was fun to go to the last section of the book and look at multiple days with different objects and try to figure out what we wanted to do. Did we want coats? Did we want thorns? You know, what did we want? So
Right.
we're doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah, a little bit. So,
How about we go to Maundy, Thursday, just to touch on it. We really wanted to spend some serious time with thorns tonight, but you can't get to the thorns without the table.
yeah, right, exactly.
So how about we start with her prayer that's on page 153. I'll say it, but if you want to say it along with me, feel free to do that. Servant Lord, on this day we remember your meal with your friends, your words of teaching, and your act of tender love. You, Lord of all, humble yourself and wash the feet of a friend and betrayer alike. You hold back nothing for our sake, and we are awed by your grace. We seek only to be more and more like you each day, taking up a towel and sharing your word, so that through our love the world may know we follow you. Amen.
Amen.
I love that prayer. And the last line, so that through our love the world will know that we follow you. So that would mean that without saying one word, how we act and how we treat people should
Right.
show them that we follow Jesus. And that's sometimes really hard to do in your own house.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Or if you're like me while driving on the road. Or perhaps that's more I can know my heart and what I'm thinking as opposed to what other people are
Right.
seeing.
Right.
So I just can understand why no one is on my timetable when I'm driving down the street.
I understand for sure.
So that image of Jesus calling getting ready for them to come into this room, and he's the host and the guest, and we say that when we serve communion.
Mm-hmm.
And just this idea that, they've come off this dusty road and their feet are absolutely filthy, and they're probably looking for a servant to do that job
Right.
of washing their feet, and there's no servant around. And lo and behold, Jesus is the one that goes around and washes their feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just the idea of carrying this basin, and with every pair of feet he washes, the water gets dirtier, and he's lugging it around on his knees.
Yeah.
And we're about to watch him and those legs be up on a cross, and this is where he is before the idea that he's brought down low before he's brought up high. Always stood out to me. So a few years ago, when it was Joel's turn at St. Tim's, and he had Maundy, Thursday, he had us each enact a disciple, and Ann Schaefer was the interim at the time, and she signed her and I up to be the sons of Zebedee. And it was hilarious because in the script, I'm reprimanded by Jesus, who was actually an actor.
Oh.
No wonder he was so good. He and Joel were the rock stars of that. But I actually get a little sassy, and I have to be reprimanded by Jesus. And Anne was like, hee. So we were arguing over, who was going to sit at Jesus's right and left. And lo and behold, that's exactly where we sat at the table. So, but it's really stunning if you've ever been at a service or at a play and you've seen the scene with people sitting at the table, and it does something. It puts you into the story in a richer way, and we're really excited. Kate figured out how we're going to fit 13 people at a table for Maundy, Thursday here at Rosedale tomorrow night, and the sanctuary looks absolutely beautiful, and thanks to her creativity in figuring out microphones and all. But we're actually, when you come to service for Maundy, Thursday, you're actually going to walk in the sanctuary and see 13 of us at a table, just like Jesus and the disciples. So you'll be thinking about this passage, perhaps, as you walk in.
Yeah.
I don't know, Kate, what stands out to you about Jesus at this dinner?
Oh, well, that's a loaded question.
There's
But I
so
especially
much.
like the way that she and so the author of our book that we've been reading from, Jill, I liked how she talked about staying at a hotel,
Mm.
and when she was walking out one day and there was the it's not hospitality cart, but the housekeeping cart was out in the hallway, and she just happened to notice that amongst all the shampoo and the soap and whatever, and the beautifully folded towels tucked in the middle of it was a bunch of Bibles, and just the reminder, just what a beautiful image that kind of struck for her. And then she just had a moment of just being thankful for these people that work this job that is often a thankless job. When you get to be the one to be a guest at a hotel, someone else is making your bed for you and picking your towels up off the floor for you and cleaning your shower for you. And, how often do we really give thought to those people that are serving in that way? And she just likened that, to Jesus, that he is the ultimate host, and there is nothing that he won't do for us when we come to sit at his table. So
That's really neat. I heard last line on page 153 about, when we're sitting at Monday, Thursday, tomorrow night, we see the image of a towel and it's right by the Word of God. So, some years ago we went on a work weekend and we carried around a big cross. I wonder what it would be like to carry around a towel, for 3 or 4 days, and to remember that wherever we go, we're to be serving people. It's kind of a great image.
yeah, absolutely.
And if you've ever been in a situation where you have had your feet washed or you've washed someone else's feet, wow, we're just not used to that.
Right.
And I just spent the week with my parents, and one of the things I got to do was I got to put a lot of moisturizer and stuff on their feet, and I've never done that before, and it was so neat. And so they looked forward to it every night. I looked forward to it every night, and it became like this intimate moment with them that after raising me and all that they've done for me, I get to turn around now and I get to do things for them. And I was thinking about this passage.
All right, you moving on to Crown of Thorns?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
go to Crown of Thorns. And I've got Good Friday thorns. So John 19 is where I'm going. All right. So here's the scripture passage for us. And it's that scene where Pilate and Jesus are there with the crowd, and it's a pretty neat dynamic. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. And so what we know is that, I think he thought, I'll just have him flogged and then maybe the crowd will be satisfied. So then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged, and the soldiers wove a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they dressed him in a purple robe. So basically, the crown of thorns topped off his kingly vestment of this purple robe. They kept coming up to him saying, "Hail, King of the Jews," and striking him on the face. Pilate went out again and said to the crowd, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no case against him." So unlike the Pilate we imagine, he's really trying to get out of this deal. He does not want to deal with Jesus. And just the behind the scenes is he's recently got in trouble. He was kind of brought a word that he wasn't being tough enough. There was all these viaducts being built, and he was kind of being accused by those in authority over him that he was being too wishy-washy, had to come down and exert authority. So here he is in this place, and he's trying to get out of it. So he's like, "Look, I beat him. He's in this crown of thorns. I've done all this stuff to him. I can't even find a case against him." So Jesus comes out wearing the thorns, the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." But when the chief priests and the police saw him, they shouted, "Crucify him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Then take him yourself and crucify him. I have no case against him." So what it means is legally, there's no case against him. So now it shifts. So basically Pilate's like, I don't want to take responsibility. His death's not going to be at my hands. You take him according to your laws. And so the Jews answered him, we have a law, and according to that law, he ought to die because he claimed to be the Son of God. Now, when Pilate heard this, he was more afraid than ever. So that makes you think, uh-oh, what if he really is? Or there's some doubt in his mind. Also, he's seeing the crowd getting revved up. He entered his headquarters again and asked Jesus, where are you from? But Jesus gave him no answer. Pilate therefore said to him, do you refuse to speak to me? Do you not know that I have the power to release you and the power to crucify you? And Jesus answered him, you would have no power over me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin. So here we're like, Jesus, why aren't you speaking up? Why are you just standing there? And that alone is a question to ponder and could be a sermon in and of itself. But and that Jesus allowed this scene to happen. He had all the power, and he chose to not exert that power because of the plan that God had given him. And so there he is standing really vulnerable with this crown of thorns on his head. And they made him out to look foolish. And, he's dragged out, and then Pilate takes him back in to kind of be like, probably like talk some sense into him, like, come on, here's your chance, speak up. They're all out there, we're in here, this is between us, let me kind of, almost like a under the table kind of deal. And he just continues to be quiet, and then Pilate tries to exert his authority, and basically Jesus says, nope, I have a higher authority than you. And so just kind of an interesting scene that in order for God's kingdom to come, this all had to transpire.
Right.
When our own human nature would be like, we're going to be begging Pilate to, yeah, oh my gosh, don't hand me over to that crowd. And just the idea of this crown of thorns, these were not like thorns on a rose. These are huge thorns, and meant to cause lots of pain. And and then the crowd changes. It's interesting. So they yell crucify after he's brought out, and he's dressed like the king. So once they see him in this mock outfit, that's when they get really enraged and yell crucify him. And of course, meanwhile, everybody in the crowd was expecting a king that
Right.
Kate talked about and preached about on Palm Sunday. That would be a king on a horse with a mighty crown, not this beaten, vulnerable Jesus who talked about a kingdom that they really weren't understanding at the time.
Yeah. They also say that physiologically that the skin on your skull is actually some of the most sensitive parts in your body. So to have this whole crown encapsulating your skull and that very thin thin skin you have between from the outside to the skull, incredibly sensitive. So just the amount of pain simply inflicted by the crown of thorns, let alone everything else that he went through. And just how humiliating, right? I mean, the whole scene for Jesus from top to bottom is humiliating from the beginning to the very end.
So it's interesting because there's on the bottom of page 155, she says this, today is Good Friday when we know without a doubt the radical, transformative, saving grace of God who takes on the sin of the world for our sake, even though we cry, crucify him. And she talks a little bit about how we continue to mock and to crucify one another. And, what does that mean when we're still these sinners and Jesus would still come today? And he's coming for the Judases and the Peters and the saints and the sinners, so to speak. And it kind of looks like a version of we have all these Law and Order. This is basically at court, and we're kind of, it's like the sensational case there's thousands of people out there watching this whole thing go down, and from a variety of places and languages. And the idea of the crowd, and you'll see it in other gospels where you have Pharisees out there and Sadducees and zealots, and everybody's got a different idea about how this thing should go. And here's Barabbas going, what?
Right?
How did I get out of here?
Yeah. Yeah. Very fascinating story with lots of powers coming together. Both human powers and holy powers coming together on that Good Friday. So, yeah. Anything else about that particular passage?
I like her question about look at the artistic renderings of this story. And if you've ever been to a museum and seen some of the paintings about what it looked like, it's interesting to me that, you know, we see paintings of Jesus when that cross is really large, and then you have this court, and the court becomes huge and Jesus becomes small, and it's you know, the different colors, the shadows, you know, it's all kind of done in the shadows, as opposed to Easter with resurrection light and yellows, and it's like, you know, there's this underhanded sneaky deals going around. And it's also a reminder about the crowd. I mean, so, you know, a few days earlier they're throwing coats down and he's the king, and here's the same crowd, and you get some instigators out there, and how quickly the crowd can turn.
Yeah. Yep.
When they don't get what they want. They're getting what they need, they're not getting what they want. And they don't know either, really.
Right.
So.
Exactly. Yep. All right, so we're going to now head into, I'm going to be taking a look at the devotional that starts on page 157, which still includes thorns. So this is the devotional from Holy Saturday. So this, I'm going to actually read to you from the prophet Isaiah. And I'm going to read to you this whole section to give you just a broader picture of what's going on here. So, you know, Isaiah is one of the major prophets from the Old Testament, and he spent a lot of his time sharing God's message with the Hebrew people, basically telling them, shape up. You got to get your acts together, because y'all just aren't behaving properly, not in the way that people of God should be acting. So Isaiah gave a lot of warnings that came right from God, saying, hey, if you don't shape up, this, and this is going to happen. And ultimately, all these prophecies did come true, because the Israelites were eventually banished to Babylon. They were taken out of their home country and exiled to Babylon. So this particular passage talks about how Assyria, the nation of Assyria, is going to eventually dominate, take over the Israelites. So this is what this says. So in that day, the Lord will whistle for flies from the Nile Delta in Egypt, and for bees from the land of Assyria. I mean, truth be told, I just want to read to you the fact that God whistled. So just
what would that
think
sound
about
like?
that for a minute. So in that day, the Lord will whistle for flies from the Nile Delta in Egypt, and for bees from the land of Assyria. They will all come and settle in the steep ravines and in the crevices of the rock, on all the thorn bushes and at all the water holes. In that day, the Lord will use a razor hired from beyond the Euphrates River, the king of Assyria, to shave your head and the hair of your legs, and to take off your beards also. So that those are acts of humiliation back in the day. In that day, a person will keep alive a young cow and 2 goats. And because of the abundance of the milk they give, there will be curds to eat. All who remain in the land will eat curds and honey. In that day, in every place where there were 1,000 vines worth 1,000 silver shekels, there will only be briars and thorns. Hunters will go there with bow and arrow, for the land will be covered with briars and thorns. As for all the hills once cultivated by the hoe, You will no longer go there for fear of the briars and thorns. They will become places where cattle are turned loose and where sheep run. So this is painting a picture of just sheer desolation and depravity, and using the image of the briars and the thorns. When there's briars and thorns around, nothing is growing. There is just no life. And that is basically what Holy Saturday really is all about. That suddenly the disciples find themselves in this space of just absolute desolation and death and not sure what's next. They lost their hope is essentially what happened. Even though, how many times did Jesus tell them what was going to happen? And it did. They still couldn't believe it. They were still devastated. So it's kind of where we sit on Saturday when we take a moment to really think about Holy Week and all the events that transpire. We typically okay, we're really busy on Thursday worshiping, we're busy on Friday worshiping, and then Saturday we just kind of forget and make our deviled eggs for Easter
right.
dinner. But it's a really good time to just kind of sit in that place and try and remind ourselves of where the disciples were and how they had completely lost their hope. But for us, because we're on the other side of the story, we know that, Easter Sunday's coming, and yay, and resurrection, and all is well. But we need to be reminded that there was this time of just desolation and darkness, and that's kind of what we try and do with these worship services, is kind of put us in those spots of things. It's over, especially at the end of Good Friday. And I love Jill Duffield's story about talking about to her son, her 10-year-old son at the time. She was taking him to a Good Friday service, and knowing that these services tend to be a little bit more intense and dramatic, especially perhaps for a 10-year-old, she was kind of trying to prep him, saying, it's going to be kind of a hard, heavy service, and it might be dark, and there might be loud noises, but don't worry, at the end, there's going to be hope. But the way that the church where they were worshiping that night ended their service, it ended in complete darkness. And her son just leaned over and said, Mom, where's the hope? And I think that's kind of what the disciples did on that Holy Saturday. They just leaned over to one another and said, well, where's the hope in all this? We can't see it. But of course, we know that there is hope. And so I thought it was kind of interesting. She points out in her devotion here, just the reminder that hope indeed was coming. It wasn't coming on Friday, and it wasn't coming on Saturday, but of course it was coming on Sunday. And when Jesus says those words, "It is finished," from the cross, the Greek word for finished gives a hint, implying not so much an end, but a completion. So when Jesus says it is finished, and those were the last words that the couple of brave disciples, well, the one brave disciple and the women who were at the crucifixion heard him say it was finished, they were probably like, oh, okay, it's just done, it's over.
Right.
But the Greek in the actual words that he used meant, okay, so this is completed, just wait, because something else is coming. So, and a reminder that, but on Friday when that last light goes dark, and on Saturday when the stone seals the tomb and night falls yet again, hope does remain hidden. So thorns and briars pervade the landscape, desolation rules where once lush vineyards grew. Buried beneath the painful brambles, rich soil might yet be tilled to the surface and new crops planted, but not now. In these long hours, when death and schism and estrangement and cruelty appear to win, all we can do is plead for a glimpse of hope. So, very applicable to our lives, right? I'm sure everyone has been in that place where it just feels like there's no hope left, and nothing to hold on to, nothing to look forward to. But God's working. He's still tilling the soil of your life, and he's preparing for new growth one way or another, and it's may not happen in the time frame in which we want it to, but it's happening, because really good things happen in the dark, right?
It's almost like we're at the visitation.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's so Jesus has died on Good Friday, and now we're at those long hours of visitation in between the cross and resurrection, where, you know, as a family, you're still in shock. You're not sure. You're kind of numb. You're going through the motions. Where are you going to get hope? You know, you're trying to figure out your footing, and what do we do at a visitation? We sit. We endure that long day without all the bells and whistles of a service to distract us. You know, and I love the image that, you know, where once lush vineyards grew. It's kind of like, you know, we see all these horrible fires that happens, and I know that when a fire hits a vineyard, there's one thing that it burns out what's above the soil. It's another thing if what's below the soil. If it's still alive, it can reproduce. It can come back, and so just that image of you know, that those who till the soil have to reach deep down in it after perhaps a fire which seems to have wiped out the whole orchard, and they reach down and see the green and the lush and the vine below. They know that it can come again.
Right.
So it's just kind of an interesting, you know, that even while we're out there, you know, in the darkness, we know that planted deep and rooted deep is Jesus and his words of resurrection.
And revisiting those words of Jesus's, it is finished, and then, like I said, when we look at the Greek where it gives the hint of not an ending but a completion, it made me think of, if you have ever seen the movie The Passion of the Christ, and that moment when Jesus dies, when he's dies on the cross, and there's they show Satan just screaming his head off, and wherever he is, you know, and it's like in that moment Satan knew that he lost in that moment of Jesus's death, though the disciples didn't know yet that he had won, but Satan himself knew that Satan was done for, simply because Jesus had completed that moment. Just that very dramatic vision from the movie. It's really like, oh, that's pretty powerful too. Before the resurrection, didn't even matter. Satan didn't care. He knew that it was done for. He was done for.
That's a great.
Simply because Jesus died.
That's a great image.
Yeah.
You know, and how often in life, you know, we get really hit by something hard. It's almost like you got to die to live, and that, you know, either you're dying to a habit or you're dying to some tragedy that has come, you know, out of nowhere and kind of uprooted you. And, you know, this idea that sometimes we almost get to the brink. It's kind of like, you know, in cancer you get chemotherapy, which almost kills you, to kill what's inside of you to bring you back to life, you know. And it's like, oh my goodness gracious.
So I think I'd like to close by reading her last paragraph from this devotion, and it says, where is the hope? It is coming. While we languish in grief, feel the prick of loss, the scrape of utter isolation, we seek others who will sit with us in our fear and our pain. Holy Saturday, that space between hope, calls for stalwart community, companions who will accompany us in our dark night of the soul, and pledge to not leave us alone. Today is a day for holding the hand of those asking in earnest, where is the hope? Today is the day we say with utter honesty, it is coming, but you just can't see it yet. So hope is coming always. Thank goodness. And ultimately, that is what we celebrate this week.
That's great. So the towel, the word of the Lord, thorns.
Yep.
Tombs.
Yeah.
All these things that kind of take us into the story. It's really kind of a neat thing to have all those objects kind of around you, and all those pieces together make up the story. So I just have thoroughly enjoyed this book. And,
Yep.
And if you all have enjoyed it, she has another book called Advent in
Ooh.
plain sight that
Oh,
I
excellent.
picked up. So we might want to consider doing
Cool.
that at Advent. But I feel like we've got so much out of this.
Oh, yeah.
This season of Lent from her writing and having us kind of dig a little deeper between the lines.
Right.
Loved it.
So thank you all for joining us. Just a quick kind of little shameless plug for we still have lots of spaces available for our prayer vigil that will start at
Oh,
3
yeah.
o'clock on Friday and end at midnight on Saturday. So please, you can sign up online because we want to make sure that every hour is covered. You can just pray right where you are, and if you are not sure what to be doing during that time, just feel free to contact one of us and we can give you some great resources. But it's just a way of us for keeping watch for Jesus' resurrection. And then, of course, we have worship tomorrow night here at Rosedale at 7 o'clock, and then we'll be worshiping over at Garden City Presbyterian on Good Friday, and then, of course, Easter Sunday at 10:30.
But if you're off on Friday for Good Friday, Chapel Friday is at noon.
There you
So
go.
Joyce Backus has been leading that, and so we welcome you to Chapel Friday as well. We'll have communion, and we finally ran out of those cups with the
terrible
wafers, so they'll actually be bread and juice, the
Yay.
real deal.
Yay!
None of those cups, they're gone.
Yes, brilliant.
Oh my goodness. So God bless you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you at worship Thursday,
Yay.
Friday, Sunday, online, in person, in a variety of locations.
That's right. Excellent.
All right.
All right.
Good
Take
night.
care. God bless.